We had a whole business model that were coming out of the school. So we became the conduit. And the very same people that said to us, you can't do this, came to us 3 years later and said, how did you do that? We all have the gift of having a certain amount of energy, and it's how you use that energy that affects how you show up in the world, if that makes sense. And so energy leadership is just that. I mean, quite in a nutshell, is how you lead with your energy. High performers tend to be surrounded by yes people. So they like to work with me because I'll challenge them. I'm not afraid to challenge them. I don't care how well known they are. Or what they've done. It means nothing to me. On the other hand, I absolutely champion them. And actually one of my criteria for clients is that they inspire me as well, right? So it's not about I know, because I don't know the answers. You know the answers. I have an expertise in listening and in asking you the right questions and reading you and that kind of a thing. But it's a co-creation.
Welcome to the StageLink podcast. Today we're talking with Lisa Hopkins. Lisa Hopkins is an award-winning communicator and ICF certified professional life coach, core performance dynamic specialist, and energy leadership master practitioner at Wide Open Stages. A creative energy optimizer, Lisa specializes in working with creative professionals in the entertainment industry. She's an expert at shifting mindset and energy and using her intuition to tap into her clients' highest potential and uncover what is holding them back from leading their created life. A passionate artistic professional herself, Lisa has over 30 years of experience working in the performing arts industry in New York City as a director, choreographer, producer, writer, and dance educator. She is the Communicator Award-winning host of the popular podcast STOPTIME, Live in the Moment, which is ranked in the top 5% of podcasts worldwide. Her book, The Places Where There Are Space, Cultivating a Life of Creative Possibilities, is scheduled to be released this summer. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I should say before we even start, not only is she a life coach, she's my coach.
Indeed. My pleasure.
And one of the wonderful things we could talk about all of the work that we've done together, but I want to start because we haven't actually talked about this, I think. Tell us about your relationship to the entertainment industry and how you ended up in the arts.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Thank you for asking. I grew up in Canada, and my mother taught me how to dance. And she grew up in a very small town in Canada. So I grew up in Toronto. She grew up in Belleville, Ontario, which is a very, very small town. And she, there was no outlet for her other than teaching, because she would have gone to New York City in a heartbeat or run to Hollywood or something, but you're not allowed to do that in her day. So she just taught anyone that she hated teaching, to be honest, but she loved dancing. So she would just gather people around. So naturally, when I came into the fold, I was one of those people. Fortunately, I too did love to dance. So we had a real synergy. And so she taught me to dance. She was primarily a tap dancer, but a massive creative choreographer too. She could choreograph anything. Like she belonged in MGM. And so I grew up with the mentality of, sort of energy, which is probably not surprising that I really work in energy now. But what was different about me is I loved to teach and I loved to know what I was doing. So we kind of complemented each other. Anyways, fast forward, she was the first one to take me to New York City. She and my dad took me there, and I saw Chorus Line when I was, 15 or 14 or something like that. And, the rest is history in terms of knowing where I wanted to be. And of course, as a Canadian girl, not yet in college or any of that. And I did want to go to college. It was far-fetched in the future, but it was my first taste. And we would go back regularly. And she introduced me to the man that later became my mentor when I did move to New York City, Phil Black, who was just a brilliant teacher and the first person to tell me that I was too strong. But I needed that. I needed the hard edge coach. I needed someone not to always be saying to me, wow, you're so strong, or you're so dynamic. He would say, you're too strong. So he taught me the whole meaning of shading in my dance. And I've carried that with me through my entire life, my career. anyways, I eventually I did major in dance. And in Canada, even though theater and jazz and theater dance and tap dancing, of course, were really where I lived, I had ballet all the way through, like we all do. But I had never really had a teacher other than my mother and other than Phil occasionally before I moved to New York. And I wanted a degree. So I was going to apply to be a journalist first. I wanted to, and I got into journalism school in Canada. But then it was actually my now husband's parents who said, "Don't you love to dance?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but I'm going to dance." And long story short is they said, "Well, there's an incredible dance program here in Toronto that you could apply to." But it was all modern and ballet, which is not my expertise. So I went to a summer school program. I auditioned, I got in. Fortunately, I was very different and I got to choreograph my own thing. And, I guess I was different enough. And I went for a few weeks and studied what modern dance really was and got the essence of it. That's probably the latent choreographer in me at that time. And anyways, I faked my way through and I got a scholarship. And I was like, oh my God. So I went and I followed those seeds and I started a modern dance company then because you couldn't really get grants to do anything other than, especially not the American art form stuff, which is really what I did. I was doing jazz and tap, but there nobody knew me as that whatsoever. And I became Lisa, the modern dancer, which was hilarious. And I started, I know. And so, it was my vehicle for choreography. And so I would create and create and create and create. And up until we were very ballsy. There were 3 of us that started the company from the university as an independent study in our 4th year. And they said, no, you can't do it because it's, a lot of arts programs don't like you to leave the school until you're ready for whatever reason. I think that's changed quite a bit. But I know Juilliard still is a little bit like that, I think. But we said, well, we're going to do it anyways. We'd love to have a credit for it. And we asked the guest artist in residence if he would be our supervisor. And of course, everybody revered him. And he was from the Limon Company or Louis Falco Company in New York. And he was brilliant. And he said, yes, absolutely. I mean, he loved our spunk. So we got to do it. And then we kept doing it. We left the university and we started a company. We started a club at school. We raised all the money. Then we rented the theater and then we did it again our first year out. And then the 3rd year, we applied to the biggest theater, dance theater. It was called Premier Dance Theater at the time in Toronto. And we submitted our work. And again, we got in, but of course we had to raise the money. But we hired the dancers that were still graduating from. So we had a whole business model that were coming out of the school. So we became the conduit. And the very same people that said to us, you can't do this, came to us 3 years later and said, how did you do that? Which we thought was pretty cool. But I hit a wall at that point because I had stretched it as far as I could go. The last thing I did was a murder mystery in modern dance that finished with the 1920s. I mean, I was stretching the modern dance to really do what I really wanted to do, which was, theater and theater dance and storytelling. And it was then that I applied for a student visa in New York and went for 10 months and never came back.
Wow.
That's kind of what happened. Then I just sort of studied there. I wasn't allowed to work there. So I was not auditioning because I was afraid. And there was all sorts of, I waited for so long for my green card and I got into a tap company. I was able to somehow do that on my student visa. At the time, they don't do this anymore, but at the time, I don't think. I had a social security number. They gave me one as a student, which is the same one that I have now as an American, because I'm a dual citizen now of Canada. I know. So anyway, so that was interesting. But anyway, so I was able to do that. And so I was in a tap company and toured all over the place. And then I was teaching. And then everyone just assumed that I had done everything. I was teaching Broadway people. And it was funny because they just assumed, I didn't pretend, that I had done every show and I had done, which I had not, because actually I wasn't actually really legally allowed to work very much. So yeah, and that was our model. We were always creating stuff. My husband's a composer. He was also from Canada. Came with me when I got the green card. He got the green card. We started our own company and started writing our own shows and touring them nationally and internationally, and that's how we made a living. And yeah, I mean, it's a very unusual story, but that's kind of what we did. We built our own.
Well, I mean, that goes to, it's a testimony to a certain mindset of self-startup, I
Oh yeah.
think, right? Across your career of making stuff work for you over waiting for opportunities to come, right? And I think that's an important attitude to take when you're going to work in the arts, because if you are going to wait for the work to come to you, then forget about it, right?
Exactly. No, exactly. We were a real catalyst. It
Yeah.
was the same mentor that got me. He didn't sponsor me, but he got the head of Broadway Dance Center to sponsor me for my green card. And that's a
Mm.
longer story, which I won't go into, but that was amazing. And I remember him just saying to the guy who did not know me, you want her to stay in this country. He was so great. He was such a wonderful man, Phil Black. And he wasn't saying
Yeah.
she's the best. It wasn't. I was no diva dancer. I was a decent, good dancer, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah.
That's amazing. And so what made you want to, or drove you into transitioning into being a life coach?
Oh, so that for me was a lateral movement. You hear a lot of people saying that they become other things, including this kind of coaching thing, because they want to leave something behind. They weren't happy where they were. I was very happy, with what I was doing, with working with my husband. I was teaching. This is going back now about 6 years now when it sort of came into my orbit. I was on faculty at Pace University in the commercial dance and musical theater program in New York City. Loving that, working really with all the professionals. It's amazing, and I mean, it was a dream job for teaching. And but I had this sense that there was more that I could do. There was more I could do more beyond what I could do in the classroom, as a storyteller. I had more in me, and I couldn't always shape it. And I was just aware of my own energy and how I could move rooms, how I could, and I was always talking in metaphors in dance class. I mean, I was a very good teacher, but my students would remind me, yeah, but you would always say, dancing is about the places where there's space, is literally like, is about the place in between. It's about the journey. I think I was kind of doing it all along. And it was around the time when my daughter was in university that I started to notice a real dangerous lack of communication amongst young people because of the internet, because of, social media and all of that. And it scared me because I know what potential they have. And so I got really, really interested in seeing how I could help. And I was going to produce an event. Of course, I went to my producer hat, where I was going to invite, women in leadership and, uh, women to come in. And it was going to be for mothers and adult daughters, like mothers and daughters. And I had all sorts of, and I thought, and I'll incorporate the physical aspect and I'll use some of my theater skills. And then I thought, I should get trained too, because you know what I mean? I suddenly was like, ping, 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 ping. And so I did. I went and did a very intense training, which took years. It's sort of. I mean, I think it's ongoing. So it wasn't a 3-week course in life coaching. Let me tell you. Uh, and I think of life coaching as a tool. It's a tool, right?
Yeah.
It's a skill set, and so yeah. And then so I went in thinking that I was going to niche out that, but then I realized it's not about niche. And again, there's a longer story in that. But during the pandemic, everything became very clear to me because I had siloed my two worlds. Because no, I'm still this and I'm still that, but I'll never leverage the two. Oh no, which is ridiculous because it's not leveraging, it's helping. And these are my people. So yes, I work primarily with creative people, and I'm just helping them in a different way. And yeah, so I guess that's the long and short of it.
That's amazing. We've talked a lot about energy leadership, but for those who don't know about energy leadership, how would you give the cliff notes, the summary of what energy leadership is?
Everyone is a leader by choice or by default. And how we lead in the world, we lead with energy, right? So how we show up in the world is an energetic choice. And I have very much a thing called that I call energetic choice, which is that, we all have the gift of having a certain amount of energy, and it's how you use that energy that affects how you show up in the world, if that makes sense. And so energy leadership is just that. I mean, quite in a nutshell is how you lead with your energy. And it's not woo-woo energy, right? It's not like, okay, it's like I'm sensing into my energy. It's rather tapping into your inherent knowing, but also bringing together head and heart, your intellectual and your artistic, all of it, right? So really sourcing out and recognizing that we are diverse beings, so we're not all one way, right? We talk a lot about this, you and I, right? It's like you and I both have a lot of strengths, right? But if we showed up with that particular strength all the time in every situation, it might not be as effective as, maybe using, like my mentor said, a different shade of us, right? Shading our movement, not going all in. So I think of it sometimes as like a soundboard, right? Where
Yeah.
we have control. We have control of all of it, and we have faders, and you don't sometimes you do want something really strong and really loud and powerful, and sometimes you just want to, bring it down, and sometimes you want to really blend and mix it. And I think to recognize that we have all of that in us. That's a lot of the work I do, is you start to tap into, oh, I'm not just this, or I don't have to be just that. I want to be that, or, so that we step into how we want to be, who we want to be. And be is, we're human beings, right? Not human doing. So it doesn't matter what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's how you're being.
No, it's good. And I think that like that awareness and that consciousness in which you go to work or go to be in a social situation or an into is an interesting work to do. And then also which is what you call me out for all the time, is the unconscious and self-talk, or the words that we use that are ingrained in us. And I find that a really fascinating approach. Do you find that with other clients too, that they have a lot of, as we've talked about, I often say I have to, and the first thing you say is, do you have to or do you want to? And it's and there's a lot, and I think that specifically with women, there's a lot of feeling like there needs to be some obligations there that we should question a lot. Do you find that a lot with other clients too, that there's a lot of ingrained narrative that people talk, a self-talk, I guess?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I tend to be myself a little bit. I'm recognizing now, because sometimes I say things, and then I'm surprised that people don't see it that way, right? That was kind of me before I became a life coach. That's where the training came in handy, where I could translate what I felt like I already knew and expected and assumed that others did. So when I would say that, so sometimes I even get surprised when I, which is why the calling out is great, right? Like, I have to. Well, you don't have to. Nobody has. I mean, I say time and time again. In fact, again, before I was a coach, I would say to my students who worked so hard to get to Pace University, which is so frigging hard to get into, right, into the program, and they get there on the first day, and I'd say, you don't have to be here. Like it's important to know that. And I didn't say it like threatening, like you better, you want fame. I mean, it wasn't a Debbie Allen moment, but it was just to put them in consciousness of saying it's a lot of pressure, and it's you ride the roller coaster. It's fun to try to go for it, right? And to get it and to be passionate, and everybody's behind you. And then you get there and you're on your own. Like, you've done your posts, you've celebrated, everyone's, and everybody's watching you. And then people lose their why. They go, wait a second, why, what am I, because they get caught in the race. They get caught in that race of, this is good. You're really talented. You should audition for that. And should, you know what I call should, right? I just call it could, right? With shame.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
we say to ourselves, I should, we're saying, yeah, I should, either because we're afraid we're going to miss out on something. Oh, I should do that. Or, oh, I should, and it doesn't feel very good. I mean, you see my face, right? But as soon as you lose the shame, right, the shush part, you go, well, I could do that. I could do that. And then once you get into I could, then it's like, you're living in sort of more in yourself. Like, I am capable of doing that. But it's not saying I have to do it or I should do it, but I could do that. Then you're moving from probability to possibility, right? Then you're in, I could do that. And then you can just, but I don't want to. Okay. Or I could do that. And actually, I really want to do that. And then when you move to I want, then you're at I want to, because you start really getting connected to, I want to, because I really like talking to Anna, right? I mean, tonight I could have said, I'm tired. I have to go on this podcast. I have to go because I told Anna that I would be there, right? And I could push through and show up. And, if I should, no, I should go because it's going to be really embarrassing and for her and for me, by all of these reasons. Again, that could shame me into going. Or I could say, well, actually, I really want to go. And why? Then I start saying, why do I want to go? And then I have more energy. Well, I want to because, well, I like to talk about what I do. I haven't seen her in a while. I want to connect with her. My energy starts to change. And then when I do that, then I start to move to the ultimate choice, right? Which is I get to, which is choice with gratitude. So not only do I choose to be here with you, right? I'm grateful for it. And so that's really being in the moment. And see, we all go through those all the time. It's true. Like we all feel, we all do a lot. And you can easily look at things with these energetic choices. I can't do that. I can't do anymore. I'm overwhelmed. No, I have to. I'm going to push myself through to I should, because if I don't, I'm a loser. To no, I could, right? And it's amazing. You can feel it dropping away, right? And as you said, it goes into the more conscious, right? So the left side of that choice capacitor where I should, where it starts to tip, is the fear-based stuff, right? The sort of less conscious. And then the consciousness just keeps opening up. And when your consciousness is opening up, then all your choices open. So even if you want to, doesn't mean you have to. That's the thing I say. You ask me like all the time, because I work with very capable people. So do you know what I mean? So they want to do a lot of things. Rarely are they going, rarely are they going, I can't do this. They're going, no, I want to do this. How? They're in that world of how, not right. And so that's when you really need to access your best energy so that you can figure out and make choices that are smart about how you can most effectively use your energy. And what you learn, and as you know, I work with people like you that are very successful and high performers, right? It's high performance mindset, right? So capable of doing a lot of things, building a bigger impact, all of this kind of stuff. And they're very aware of their own capabilities. But what they need to learn, and what, the kind of work we do together, is understanding, again, the diversity of you, of that just because you can doesn't mean you can't. And actually, when you let go of your strength, which sometimes can become your weakness, like it did with me and my dance mentor, right? When I was only going pow, 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 pow. It's like, yeah, but where's the pow, poo, pow, pow? Like, where's the nuance? Where's the, it's like, it's the same in leadership, right? If we're only leading one way. Yeah. And again, that's energy leadership, because we're creative people, but that I want to. So then you can go, well, I really want to. So you're not going to say, I can't. You're going to figure out how. Okay. Well, maybe there's a different way, like you with your transition, right? I mean, a different, how can I play a different role in this capacity and still do what I want to do? Right? Not about how can I dim down or how can I put up boundaries, or, I mean, yes, I mean, occasionally that comes up, but mostly it's about how do I use my energy effectively? How can I be as effective in each scenario as I know I can be?
And now a note from our sponsor. The StageLink podcast is proud to be sponsored by ClearCom. ClearCom is the leader in voice communications for theatre and the performing arts. Call your cues with the simplicity and elegance of ClearCom Intercom solutions. You can find them at clearcom.com. Go check them out. No, thank you for sharing that. I think it's really, I think that people think, oh, well, why would you need a coach at any point in your life, perhaps? But for me, I think that it's, the capacity to expand beyond what your own parameters and your own mindset that you've built over many years, to discuss at that level, for me, always opens doors of opportunity and optimism and hope and relaxed, we live in such a fast-paced environment, right? And we're always putting a lot of pressure on ourselves for deliverables, and the innate sort of rewiring of, I have to I can, or I want to, or I get to. It really especially taps into, for me, where do I really want to direct my energy? And that, for me, at this point in my life, is really important, whether that be parenting or running StageLink or devoting myself to Our Legacy Creations, which is I'm an executive producer of. All of these things require time and energy and effort, and you have to have a masterclass in your own head about where you put that energy,
Yeah.
So tell me about, for the wider audience, what, obviously without divulging any details, but when people come to you for your services from the creative industry, what are they generally looking for? What are they generally struggling with? Or what kind of people come to you to work with you?
Yeah, I mean, it's bespoke to each client, right? I don't, it's interesting because I'm invitation or referral only. So usually if someone comes to me, they've either talked to somebody that's worked with me that they respect, right? Or they've maybe been part of something or heard me somewhere, and we met and we had a call. And so already there's that layer. So I'm not sort of one of these coaches who's out there like looking to build a big roster. Do you know what I mean? Build roster and stuff. So I literally it runs the gamut in a way, from sometimes, like I think you said it a little earlier, sometimes they don't even exactly know like why. Like I always say that, they don't sort of necessarily come with, I have a problem. Do you know what I mean? And I need you to help me like do a 12-step plan or whatever. I mean, at all. I have one of my clients, for instance, which is really interesting, was a creative, a very, very successful creative, as a younger person, and doesn't want to do it anymore. So that for me is really fun because she's a blank slate, like literally. But it's interesting because it starts to unfold into thinking, there's a thinking there that comes in, which is, I've left that, kind of like what I had. I've left that, therefore I'm not connecting it to what I'm going to create here. And what she's learning is actually it's all part of you. It doesn't mean, it might manifest in a different way. So that's something that's growing, and whatever she, develops out of that, who knows, but it'll be really exciting. So some others come from, there are specific problems during the journey sometimes, but often I say to my clients, as you all know, that they come in there. Sometimes it's more, how do I say this? I'm a trusted advisor to a certain extent, right? High performers tend to be surrounded by yes people. So they like to work with me because I'll challenge them. I'm not afraid to challenge them. I don't care how well known they are. Or what they've done. It means nothing to me. On the other hand, I absolutely champion them. And actually one of my criteria for clients is that they inspire me as well. Right. So it's not about, I know, because I don't know the answers. You know the answers. I have an expertise in listening and in asking you the right questions and reading you and that kind of a thing. But it's a co-creation. So, yes, there are lots of sort of typical things. It always comes down to mindset. On the podcast, those are basically conversations. Those are basically coaching conversations. And most recently, on my most recent episode, I was speaking with, and you can listen to it if you want. You'll get a good sense. But the gentleman that's playing, he's in Hamilton. He's starring in Hamilton on Broadway, and he was sharing on the podcast that he gets really nervous still. He's done it for 6 years. He gets really nervous leading role before he goes on, that he's going to like forget his lines or crack or whatever. And he's brilliant. I mean, he's, and he goes, but I conquer it and I go out there and it's great. And I sort of said to him, that's cool. I mean, that's a great tool. Obviously it works for you. And I said, have you ever thought about that now you have a limiting belief that if you don't do that you're going to fail? He goes, well, and just like you kind of unpack that, like, because no one's ever, he was like, oh my God. And I said, no, I mean, we start to build these things, because he was like, really like, and it's great. And I figured out how to get through it. And I said, what if you didn't? What if you didn't feel like you had to conquer it? He's like, well, I've never really tried that. That's what works. And I go, yeah, it works, but you don't know what else works because you always do that. So it's that kind of a thing where you sort of, I really sort of listen. And the other thing, that my favorite thing about coaching is that I don't get into your story. So I'm not right. So I'm not kind of going, oh yeah, me too, just because I'm in the arts or whatever, unless someone asks me, can you please put on your consulting hat, you as the artist or whatever, what do you think? Of course. Right. When you build the relationship, but what I love is that it's the client's agenda, and that, I always ask with permission, and that I am completely unattached to what it's supposed to be. Like I try to teach that to my clients. I said, if I was worried about giving you a good session, then that's my ego. That's actually me worrying about me, because my job is just to focus on you and do what I do. And what we co-create out of that is what we co-create out of that, right? And to trust that. Yeah. So it's always different. People come in with something that's top of mind for them because that's their context. So I'll always say, what do you need today? Or, where should we begin? What's top of mind? But it inevitably leads somewhere else. And I think for me, that's the definition of holistic, because the way we do one thing is the way we do everything.
Well, oh my God, you just said two things that I think really resonate with me from when I used to teach yoga, because I used to do that for a period of time. No time in my life right now for that. But when I did do that, there was no use coming up with a plan of what the yoga, because I used to teach it at the show that I used to work on after the show. So how the performers showed up to the yoga class was different every time. Sometimes they were exhausted, sometimes they were energized, sometimes they were pissed off, and so watching their energy, I would do the class that fit the way that they were, and you come as you are. And I used to say that to them as well, as like, how you show up to the mat is how you show up to the world, right? And what's beautiful about watching or teaching people yoga is you, again, like you learn as much as you do when you teach, because you're learning what that person's limitations are, what frustrates them, how they move their body and how they work their body on the mat. Pretty much tells me everything about them, right? Yep. Which is such a fascinating thing. You're not just teaching; they're revealing themselves to you, and that I don't think the coaching thing is the same thing when we go into. And the other beautiful parallel is like you go to a yoga session and you come out with a different energy, and when we do a coaching session, I'll come in slightly agitated about the day, and then at the end of the session, I will have let that go, whatever that was, because I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I'm taking a different energy. And I think that, as a person who's committed to growth, and you are like this too, it's just that's a never ending journey. Mm-hmm. And I find that really fascinating. I think that there's so much human potential. And I think that we we limit ourselves if we don't continue to grow and think about expansion in that sense, as a human being.
Yeah.
Right?
You took the words out of my mouth. I mean, expansion. That's exactly the reason. People, at least the people that come to me, they don't need a coach. They want a coach. They want a partner. I mean, it's like being part of the team, right? It's like having someone that's really there for you and only for you. Not like a friend, right? Not like a friend who will always try to give you advice and say, "Oh, you're not feeling well. Oh, let me get you a cup of tea." but rather, but certainly that is sensitive, obviously, but that is there for you because they see your brilliance and they, right, and yeah, and we'll go with you, like you said, in the yoga class. We'll definitely follow your lead. That's what I mean. It really is the lead of the client. Leading and coaching is the number one no. If you can't lead the client. Oh, so what you're saying, what you really mean is, so you should do, like, it's like you're not like asking closed-ended questions too is it's not like a rule, but I mean, it's kind of a guideline, right? Because it's never black or white. You don't want to shut it down. You feel good, you feel bad. And I always make them say, hell yeah. Like, is it a yes or is it a hell yes? Like, if you want to do something. Do you know what I mean? And I say that I challenge people who want to work with me. If I have someone that comes to me and says, I want to, I really, had an experience and we had a conversation, they'll say to me, no, I really want to work with you. What's next or whatever. And I'll just slow them down and I'll say, I just did this very recently. I'll just say, first of all, if you want to work with me, you'll end up working with me, but let's just slow this down, right? I mean, at coaching school, they'd say, get out your credit card, like, and get them to sign there. Like, but that's not, that's not what it is. That's just not what it is. So what I will say to my client is, look, I don't need another client. And in fact, the reason we have this conversation is to see if we're a good fit, because I would be doing you a disservice if you weren't, if we weren't aligned and I have said no to people for that reason. But I'll say to them, listen, I want to work with you too. This was a recent person. Actually, no, I do have room in my roster, and you are the type of person that I would like to work with. But I want you to think about it. And I want you to think about it. And I want you to, if it's a hell yes, then all I want you to do is to text me, hell yes, when you're ready. And if you're not ready, that's okay. And it's so funny because 3 days went by and I was like, okay, and I have to learn. I mean, I'm human. I have to go, well, maybe that was too hardcore. but actually, a couple of hours later on the third day, I get a text just saying hell yes. And then just a sort of, I'm not even sure what this is. This person really didn't know anything about it. But I'm in. And that's the kind of person I like to work with, right?
Leap of faith, man. Let's find out.
Yeah, but it's edgy, and and I think it needs to be edgy, because there are plenty of people out there who will make you feel better and all that, and as you said, you do feel better when you do this work, but that's not the reason you come. Is I want Lisa to make me feel better, and that's right. Probably why I became a coach too, and why I'm a really good coach, because I think when I was in the room all the time, I always made people feel better. Because I'd be dynamic and I'd teach them really fun stuff, and I'd go, come on, let's go. And like, that's, rah, rah, rah. And, that's just such a small part. I mean, yes, of course I champion my clients, but, I challenge them as well. And because no one else will,
That's really interesting. Yeah. We always ask the same question at the end of each podcast, which is interesting for you because I think you see a lot of people in the industry. But I'll start with, what's your most favorite thing about your job?
Definitely the people, the connection, and the learning. I think what I like most about it is I would never call it a job either. Isn't that funny? Like, it's something that I feel like I created and crafted. That's why it does not feel disconnected at all from what I used to do, even though it's not physically the same. And it feels expansive in my brain too, right? So I think a lot of the things that we're going on here now can actually come out in the world in different ways. And now I'm writing and reading, and talking and speaking. And yeah, but I mean, ultimately it's absolutely the connection. I mean, I get so much joy, as I'm sure you do, like with podcasting, with talking to people. I mean, it's so fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I always leave a podcast more pumped than when I walk into it
Yeah, the
because
connection,
I've
right?
always
Yeah, totally.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, met somebody, and it's an injection of enthusiasm for the industry for me because I
Mm.
always
Oh,
like
I love that.
had a hard day at work or
Yeah.
either end. It's like a yoga class again. I never walk out regretting that I did it for sure.
Nope.
It's great.
Nope.
And from all your discussions with people in the industry, if you could change something about the industry, what would that be?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. I would change the speed, and the sort of limiting belief that everything has to be quick and decisions have to be quick. I mean, I understand time and I understand budget, and I mean, obviously there are practical things, but it is a mindset. And I think it doesn't take much longer to actually just stop for a minute and think about something like the hell yes, right? To really, because the ROI on the end of everything is going to be so much higher when if you're invested in actually listening, in actually giving people time to think. Because what happens with limiting beliefs, which we keep coming back to, and this mindset thing of the shoulds and all that, is everything we've been taught. And so we almost do it like Pavlov's dogs when someone says, okay, this is right. They're all cues for us to say, especially in the theater, right? There's just so many, tropes about places. Okay, we all know what happens at places. I mean, and obviously they're important, but I don't know. We all get ready for for the tech week and everything. I mean, I have one client who she's been in for years, but man, whenever tech week's coming up for one of her big projects, it's like, oh no, I'm just going to be, and you just buy into that thinking it's going to be awful
Yeah.
and all of that. And I think, yeah, so that's a long answer, but I think the speed and also just I think we all need to start asking questions about why, right?
Mm.
And why not as well. I mean, there are great things I think we need to go through and think about, ways to be more effective that aren't just about being faster. I think
Mm.
efficiency seems to just mean speed.
Right? And it's not necessarily the case. I have a colleague that I watch who masterfully, when things get chaotic, I watch him deliberately go down gears and slow down, right?
Yeah.
And I watch that when everybody starts to get frantic, how he will shift a gear down,
Yep.
and slow it all down. And I think it's a masterful approach because that's the only way you can change that energy in the room and just because you can take a time to make a decision doesn't make it less efficient, right?
Yeah.
So
No.
yeah,
It's
for me again, it's about balance. It's some days you have to shift gears down, and some days you have to go up to, gear 5 and go hard, right?
Oh
So
yeah. Oh
it's
yeah. And
I love.
yeah, and if we can work on our assumptions, I think so many of us assume that things are going to be a certain way. And then particularly
Mm,
when you're on the other side of the table, like I've been a lot on the other side of the table auditioning people and that kind of a thing, and I more than the other, and I know what that feels like. And I always try to tell people, you've got to remember that, because there's I've got to get this job, man. This is a big movie, I'm really going, and you're going, listen, like, you're the expert in you. The people on the other side of the table want you to be right for the role, or they wouldn't have invited you to do the role. So but you can't control what's going to happen. But what you can control is being you and doing your best job. So yes, do your homework, know your lines, do everything you know how to do, but then just allow yourself to be you. So then the goal becomes to be the best that you can be. And you can always succeed in that. You can always succeed in being your best. You can't, but if you attach it to someone else saying, yeah, you're the best for the role, well, then you're setting yourself up for failure, because at the end of the day, everybody's talented, right? And, but everybody's not always right for the particular mix or whatever. And I think we have to really understand that, but we get brought up in that cutthroat thing, and then it must be me. I'm not good enough. And that you hear, I mean, that's just such an old story, but it's really ingrained in our industry, I feel, and so it'd be nice if that went away. So really, it's a lot of mindset. I mean, I think, I think I've talked to you about this before, is that this kind of work, the work that I do, I have a dream to be able to give access to creative teams, and even in the administrative part of the team, all the way down to the performers and the stagehands and and the PR people, to have access to this kind of work so that we can have a language to speak to, and we can recognize energy in other people and adjust accordingly, as opposed to typing people, right? Everything's typing. Like, it's like, no, she's that type. No, she's only good at this, or she's only good at that. And then we have to prove ourselves, and so on and so forth, So I think it's that diversity of thought, I guess. The diversity is definitely what it is. You know what I mean? It's like, it's definitely about the multi-layeredness of ourselves and others.
Mm.
That's
Absolutely.
important. Yeah.
Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the StageLink podcast. I've so enjoyed talking to you and catching up with you. So thank you.
Ditto. It was my pleasure. And congratulations. It's great that you're doing this. I'm excited.
Thank you.